Okay. Call a meeting to order.
Sure. First items are minutes of the Council and Committee meeting held Monday, July 9th. The recommendation is that the committee approve those minutes.
Moved by Councilor Sikora, second by Councilor Reamer. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 2 is a report of General Manager Planning and Development related to the Design Guideline Consolidation Project. And we have introductory comments by a City Manager and a presentation by our Manager of Community Planning.
If I could just briefly introduce this issue before Carl gives you a bit of a presentation on it. This issue highlights a very good difference between the historical way Coquitlam dealt with some issues and the direction we're trying to move in. The way I would describe it, the historical approach to some of these planning processes was lots of detail, but not enough context, clarity, and thought that goes behind the efficiency of how the various plans fit together. This is not simply a planning approach, that there are similar kinds of approaches in other parts of our organization, but this is the area where it became most critical for us to really focus in on with some of the planning initiatives that are coming forward. So just with those very brief introductory comments, I'd like to ask Carl to walk you through the report and what some of the issues are and what we are going to be dealing with it, because I think the future will bring a better day for Coquitlam in this area.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Your Worship and Council. Yeah, so I'll be providing a brief overview of the report before you today regarding the Design Guideline Consolidation Project. It's an initiative that's being undertaken by Community Planning Division in collaboration with other city staff, and is being led by Andrew Merrill, our community planner, seated over here, and he will be in front of council in the fall to report out on the, along with me, to report out on the results of this project. Okay, so starting off with a little bit of background, the design of new development in the city is regulated through a variety of policy tools, which we've collectively labeled as design guidelines, including policies in the official community plan, or OCP, development permit area guidelines, which guide the form and character of new development, guidelines that are specific to neighborhoods to encourage a particular character to be developed over time or to preserve a particular character that's already there, and also street design guidelines. So all total, there's about 530 guidelines in 31 different documents or OCP sections, which have accumulated over time. Many of these guidelines contain similar policy language, for example, policies that encourage the development of more pedestrian-friendly neighborhoods and streetscapes, but there's a lot of duplicate policies with 500 plus guidelines, and sometimes they're contradictory. And some guidelines are structured differently and apply in different ways based on when they were developed. So the result is confusion on the part of applicants and developers, and also increased processing and staff time spent going over applications and referencing different documents. So moving forward on this issue, it's important to note that the city is pursuing business improvements where council and staff are working to address outdated rules, reduce red tape, and streamline regulations. And planning staff are undertaking a consolidation of these many design guidelines to help implement this initiative and make them more user-friendly. Okay, so this image here summarizes the scope of the project, where you have a series of existing guidelines and a number of different documents, and the scope is to review, consolidate, streamline, and essentially distill these guidelines and documents down into one specific section in the OCP. And the benefits of this, creating a one-stop shop approach, reducing red tape, providing clear design direction, improving processing times for applications. Again, creating a one-stop shop makes it a lot easier for developers to see the guidelines and what they need to bring in, and also helps staff reduce staff time in reviewing applications, and it reduces applicant confusion. Okay, so this process is going to be undertaken in 2 phases. The first phase is to consolidate existing guidelines into one OCP section, which will have high-level design principles, and then the development permit guidelines flowing from those. It's also important to point out that neighborhood-specific guidelines will be maintained to ensure that guidelines that guide character in particular areas of the city are there. And the development industry will be made aware of this initiative in Phase 1. Phase 2 will involve the development of select new guidelines to fill policy gaps which have emerged due to recent new development and anticipated new development. For example, new commercial development that could be developed adjacent to the Evergreen Line Guideway. Having some policy direction on that will be important, but I also emphasize that we want to limit the amount of new guidelines that we create, otherwise that would work against the idea of consolidating what we have. So we want to be strategic in that regard. And it also, Phase 2 may also involve further refinement of the development permit guidelines to make them more user-friendly and clear. And this phase will also involve consultation with the development industry, public and city staff. And I just also want to note that there's parallel improvements that complement this initiative, including continuing to improve neighborhood plans. So community planning staff will be working to update the organization of neighborhood plans that are coming forward, putting in more concise policy, and making them more user-friendly for the public, development industry, and staff alike. And this also complements the approach for more generalized, flexible land use plans and improving the process in preparation of neighborhood plans. Okay, so summing up the presentation in terms of next steps, moving on from the update today, we're going to go and work on consolidating these guidelines in Phase 1 in the summer and early fall, and come back to you in the fall to report out on the results of Phase 1. And then after that, do Phase 2 and come back to Council to report out on the results of Phase 2 in the fall of 2013. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. You were more expedient than the mayor expected. So I'll take the chair. Maybe we could have a motion to receive before discussion. Moved by Linda, seconded by Councillor Robinson. I've never sat here before, so I'm going to need some guidance from the clerk.
No problem, just press the,
Councillor Sikora?
press the speaker's name.
I'm sorry?
It's very, very,
Speakers.
I'll take my direction from Carrie.
First on the speaking list is Councillor Sikora.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay, so you
press
don't need
that.
to touch it, I'll do all of this.
Okay.
You just need to read off the names.
Great.
That's a
Thank you.
speaking order.
I always thought it must be really simple when I watched the mayor do it. Councillor Sikora.
Yeah, thank you very much. A great presentation. The one thing that bothers me, and I know that, once this is done, it'll be streamlined to where it'll be more simplified and go a lot faster. But I'm wondering why from July to fall of 2013 to get all this work done. It doesn't seem like there's really a whole lot to be done to take over a year and a half to get things done.
Through the mayor to Councillor Sikora. Yeah, we definitely will have the bulk of the consolidation of the existing guidelines. Right now we have 530. We're looking to cut those in half at a minimum, and we want to bring back the results of those pretty quick in the fall. So we want to, that's the bulk of the work. The Phase 2 is a little bit longer because we want to take a good look at what new guidelines should be brought forward. Again, we want to be strategic about it, and there is some consultation involved, so we do have to give ourselves a little bit of time in terms of planning for the meetings and giving appropriate notice and that sort of thing. I think the emphasis here is that we do want to bring something tangible back in the fall right away to make sure that we can get to that one-stop shop as soon as possible, and then we'll work to add those strategic guidelines as we move forward. And there is a possibility that we can bring it forward quicker.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor O'Neill.
Yes, thank you. I really like the direction this is headed in. The fact that you're looking, I didn't hear it in your first presentation, but in answer to the last question, looking at cutting in half the 530, that's a good direction. I know there's some people on council that when they look at ongoing issues such as budgeting, talk about zero-based budgeting and essentially rebuilding the budget every year. We also, which in a way is sort of an exercise to rethink everything you're doing all the time. And this isn't as radical as that, of course. You're not having to reinvent every design guideline that's been approved for neighborhood plans and official community plans and stuff. But I think it is a good idea to take a step back and to survey the landscape and to say how much of this do we really need. And I really like the idea that there's going to be some sort of broad consultation with industry that's building all of this stuff. I would imagine that they're all good community partners with us, but I imagine that there's a fair bit of frustration when you get down into all these overlapping design consultations. So that's design guidelines. So that's good as well. Some libertarian people I know would say government should get out of this area altogether, but I don't think that's what 99% of our community wants. They do want some coordination. If we can satisfy that while making it easier and less restrictive, I think we're headed in the right direction. Thanks.
Very conciliatory. Councillor Asmussen.
Thank you very much. I like the direction. It's something I've been talking about for a number of years now, is the streamlining of the operations here, and to see staff now coming forward with this process. And it was quite, when you look at it, you got 530 different design-related policy, and as you noted, some are contradictory. So I think this is going to help staff as well as the developers, but also help us be more efficient in how we deal our business, and that's going to create a great benefit on the outside community, showing that direction and leadership. But I look at the fall of 2012 by cutting these in half, and that's quite a challenge ahead of you, and there's a ton of work here, so good luck with that. I'm impressed that you have that tight of a timeline to cut that from 530 down to half that number, and if there's a delay, I could understand a bit on, but I do like the challenge that you have uptake to do that in such a short period of time, and good luck, and looking forward to the updates on this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Robinson.
Thank you. I also will lend my voice to the fact that I think this is a great direction. Was anyone shocked when they counted 530? Was that a surprise, or is that sort of... That was a surprise?
Yes, you can count that.
I'm a little shocked. And so what catches my attention is the outcomes that we're looking for. So we're looking to reduce red tape, provide clear and concise design direction, reduce wait times. And so that's the part that I'm going to be looking for in terms of measurement. So whether we have 265 or 180, may not make much difference if we're not achieving the goals, which is that we want to reduce these things. So if we have 180 of these, but it still takes a real long time for people to go through the process, then we've missed something. So I'd be interested, and you may not know now, but when you report out some sort of way to measure that this was a successful project, because this is a project, and did it achieve the goals we wanted it to achieve? So it says here that we're looking to improve design consistency across the city. So will we be taking pictures to say, yes, we've actually done that? Or reducing staff time and reviewing development permit applications. So have we actually done that? So those are the kinds of things that I'll be looking for, a year out, so that we can say, yes, this was successful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. I've got some comments of my own, but first, Councillor Reamer.
Thank you very much. I am really happy to see this. I think it's great. I do have one question, and you alluded to it in your presentation, with the fact that we are going to be reducing these in half for the citywide official community plan. How are you going to deal with those neighborhoods, for instance, and I'm thinking of Maillardville as an example, that may want different design guidelines than other parts, or other neighborhoods for that matter too, that may want different guidelines? How are you going to mesh all that?
Through the mayor to Councillor Reamer, very good question. Basically, we're going to maintain the the design guidelines that are specific to particular neighborhoods like Myardville, the guidelines that seek to encourage a particular character that's based on the consultation process, what feedback we got from that, what's happening in the neighborhood. So there will be a section that will apply to neighborhoods specifically. So we want to make sure we don't lose that. That's a critical part of the process.
Okay, so if we're looking though at a neighborhood that doesn't want that different character, are those and those neighborhoods already have design guidelines in place, how is that going to work with the overall umbrella of design guidelines?
Yeah, I think there's going to be a common set. Like for each neighborhood in the city, there's probably going to be a common set of guidelines that apply, and then you have the specific ones that are brought forward.
Okay.
Yes.
So there'll be like two sets. There'll be one that's more common and one that's unique to that neighborhood.
That's right. Like for example, policies that encourage street fronting development would apply in Myardville. They would apply in City Centre. They apply in Coquitlam. Those are the basic tenets of pedestrian-friendly urban design. However, there might be some guidelines that talk about materials and architectural character and that sort of thing that apply to Myardville but don't apply in Coquitlam or City Centre. Yeah.
Okay, I get the picture. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. I had a couple of comments. One of them was similar to Councillor Robinson. She didn't frame it the way she normally does. She normally says output versus outcome. Do we want to cut from 530 to a number, or do we want to get an outcome, which the outcome ought to be a more understandable system? And I used to do a lot of work in municipal government, and there's that moment when you're trying to determine whether there's a rule against what you want to do or a rule saying you have to do it. And sometimes there's both. And so identifying all of these things and making certain that they're all justified and belong there, and right-sizing the regulatory framework so that in the end the outcome is achieved, which is a smoother process, and in this industry a shorter process, a process that doesn't take as long. So I don't know what the number is, but I think we have to be, as Councillor Reamer points out, responsive to each community at the same time as we want to try to make sure we don't have regulations that either are in conflict with one another or simply aren't producing the kind of goal we're trying to achieve here. So, Councillor Reid.
Thank you. I notice the word is guidelines, and I hope that's the operative word, because when we get into specific design criteria in different neighborhoods, I don't want to be stuck into vinyl villages all over Coquitlam, and I want to make sure that they're open enough that as we go 5 years down the road and there's some new products, exterior cladding products or something like that come on the market, that it doesn't preclude hopefully us getting some really innovative construction and contractors in our city, because as you know, we're getting a little ho-hum and we need more wow factor, and we need some different buildings and different exteriors, and so I hope you're taking the word guideline very seriously. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other speakers, thank you very much. A motion to receive would be in order. Was that on the floor? My apologies. I wasn't here at that.
Thank you.
Yes, I assumed so. There you go. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 3 is report of Deputy City Manager related to business improvements and outdated rules. It's an update report. We have an introductory comments by Deputy City Manager and a presentation by our Manager of Corporate Planning.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. This is the 6th report on this topic. We started this initiative approximately 2 years ago. I believe it's been a real success in terms of improving our business processes and eliminating what we refer to as red tape. What we're really trying to do here is strive for a culture of continuous improvement, so we're always challenging ourselves to look at ways to do things better. I'd like to use this as an opportunity to thank Michelle Hunt, our Manager of Corporate Planning, as well as the staff team for business improvements. They are the champions for this initiative, and we do have representatives from all our work areas that contribute to this initiative. And with that, I'll turn things over to Michelle. She has a short presentation and can answer any detailed questions Council may have.
Thank you. Your Worship and Council, good afternoon. Just a very quick presentation here from the Staff Committee on Business Improvements and Outdated Rules. As the Deputy City Manager mentioned, we've been around for about 2 years, formed in August 2010. And we've looked at over 200 items to date. Some of those have led to change and others haven't, but it's a continuing process. Currently, we have about 58 items on our work plan. 24 of those came forward from last year. There were things we started last year or tried to start and didn't get to. And then another 34 items that we wanted to start looking at this year. And this is a bit of a moving target. As we go through these items, some of them morph into more than one. You know, they become 2 phases, so something that's a quick fix, and other ones that are going to take longer. And other things, we look at them and say, okay, these should be combined. They're working together. So 58 is what we have on the list, but as I say, it's a bit of a moving target. The other thing that this doesn't capture is all the items, all the work that's going on within individual departments where they're looking at their own processes and making improvements in a continuous way. These are things that, you know, they may not impact departments outside of their own, and so they're just doing it. They're just making these improvements. So I just want to make that point that, you know, there's other work going on in this regard. So yes, this year we've made fairly good progress, but I just want to highlight that, you know, out of those 200 items, we've really, we've done all the quick wins, we've done all the easy ones, and now we're really left with the ones that have got some significant work. From an organizational perspective, they're either, you know, big changes to policy, or they require technology, or they're sort of departmental, cross-departmental business processes. So we're into the big stuff here. For example, some of the ones where we're looking at new technology, having an interactive recreation guide, being able to provide the public with looking at their building permits and development applications online. Changing from a microfiche to a scanning requires big policy work as well as new technology. So those are some of the items that we're working on, but will take a little bit longer. This year, obviously the big one was the website, and that wasn't part of the Business Improvements Committee. There was another website advisory committee that was formed, but that's really provided us a basis for doing a lot more business improvements. Out of that, you've seen the My Coquitlam portal, the new queue, the map, and the e-billing for utilities and property taxes. We've also done a fair amount of work looking at bylaws, the zoning bylaw, development procedures bylaw. There's been some housekeeping updates, as well as new bylaws such as the delegation of authority one that came through earlier this year. Just to give you, I asked the Website Advisory Committee if I could just let you know some of the things that have come out of that, because I don't think you've had the feedback on that yet. They've been monitored during this, and it's been a real success. And this, again, is opening up that door for more business improvements. We've been tracking the mobile users, and about 14–15% of people going to our website are mobile users using their iPhone and their Android. The other thing is the languages, again. Now, we're not actually translating to these languages, but we can tell what the language setting is for the browser that's coming to our website. And we're seeing that it's English, Korean, Chinese. All these people are looking at our website. So again, that gets us thinking as business improvements down the road. One of the my focuses for the last 6 months has really been on gathering feedback. So we have our Ipsos Reid survey that we do once a year, and that provides us with a general overview of how citizens feel, you know, how satisfied they are with our services and their contact experience. But there's other ways that we can sort of drill down and find out how we're doing. And one of the things we've implemented for business licensing is after the business has renewed or applied for a business license, they get one of these emails and a quick survey. It's a 10-question survey, takes less than a minute, that says, you know, we're trying to improve our business processes. How happy were you with this process? It's 10 questions. It asks, you know, very specific things about, was the forms understandable? Did the information that accompany the forms? Was that was that understandable? Was our website useful? So that we can really drill down into these processes, and if there is a problem, that we can fix it. We can say, okay, we're getting a number of people saying that this form is not understandable, so let's look at it, let's fix it. Public Works is doing something very similar with their small capital projects. They're going to be launching a customer feedback survey. So after they've done a project, they would leave a card at the resident's door saying, please give us your feedback, and questions like, were you notified in a timely manner? Was the work site kept clean? And again, things that we can really action upon if we find out that it's not working. Some of the other ways that we've been gathering feedback is through the business retention program that the Manager of Economic Development has. He's bringing me things, and after he's been out talking to businesses, if there's common themes, he's coming back and saying, can you add this to the list, because I'm hearing this. And through employee suggestions and our comment cards as well. So my focus has really been on getting this feedback. And on feedback, again, I asked the Website Advisory Committee if I could let them know, because they did a survey from people with the new website. They had over 100 respondents, and it was overwhelmingly positive. Looks great, good colors, like the photos, like the navigation. And again, if there was something that the people didn't like, this is a good way of finding out, okay, what do we need to do to change? So I'm up here on behalf of these people. This is the whole staff committee, and I just want to acknowledge that this is a team effort. And now I'll open it up to questions on specific items if you have them.
Thank you very much, Michelle. Councillor Reid.
Thank you. Two things. The documents that are being microfiched, like some of our old plans and surveys and that, are you going back and are you scanning all the old microfiche, or are you just going back to a certain date?
That project is on hold right now. There's a lot of policy work that has to be done before we actually start that scanning process, and as well as getting the scanners that can handle that high resolution.
But is the plan to just archive some of the old stuff and leave it alone and just start from a certain date?
No, I believe it is to go back and take the time to go back and make sure that everything's scanned so that it's into our archives. Yeah.
Okay. And the other comment I have, on page 6, you mentioned about an employee suggestion program, and I love those. Through the years, I think they're great. But I think there has to be some way to have an anonymous employee suggestion program, and I don't know that just an internet can be that anonymous. So I think that's really important, especially in an organization of this size. So I'd like to make sure that we have some opportunity for that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do we ridicule any of the suggestions? No, I agree with the last comment, because there are some times when...
Yeah, we did develop an online form that's on the internet for people to fill in, and I can make that anonymous, actually. I just have to change some things on that form.
Give that some thought. Okay. Councillor Reamer.
Thank you very much, and I want to thank you and the staff team for all the hard work that you've put into this. Can you go back to the survey that you showed up on the screen?
The business improvements?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm wondering if it would be helpful, in addition to these questions, to have like a paragraph type space. For instance, have you any other suggestions?
Yes. Sorry, there is. The very last one is a open-ended. If you have any improvements or suggestions for improvements,
oh, is that right? I didn't see
here.
it here. Okay,
no,
that's super. Also, are we giving these out in hard copy as well as emailing out?
No, I'm not at this point. There is a comment card that people can pick up in all our different facilities, so they could pick that up and give us their comment card in hard copy, but the survey itself is just online. Because I'm actually emailing it to people that provide their email address.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, because there are a set of people out there that are more comfortable completing this survey in hard copy rather than over the email, and I'm one of them. And so that was just one suggestion I have. The other suggestion I had, or I'm wondering about, are we at the point where, and you already are going somewhat outside of the city by asking for this business improvement customer feedback, but are we in a position where we ought to bring some of these things, for instance, perhaps to some of our advisory committees for their feedback on and sort of getting an outside perspective? Because you're doing everything that you know of and staff is aware of, but what if there's somebody out there that has a great idea that you all haven't thought of? And so I'm wondering if that is in the works.
Yeah, I mean, the first step of that was going out to the businesses and trying that. It is tricky to try and get that outside feedback. But yeah, using the committees may be a way of doing that. Or the Tri-City Chamber of Commerce. I've talked to David about somehow we can engage them and look at ways.
Because I know the Tri-City Chamber has been involved in business roundtables in the past where they have had to bring suggestions forward. And it's always sometimes a good idea to get outside eyes looking at things, because when you're on the outside, you look at things very differently than we do on the inside. And I know that as a council member from before I was elected to now, I'm looking to the outside, that it's different when you're on the outside looking in. I just thought you might get a slightly different perspective, but I really appreciate all the work that you've done in this area, and it's I'm really very proud of our city for taking this on. Thank you.
Thank you. While this one's up here, when we first started talking about this, that was probably 3 years ago, with the previous economic development officer. We were talking about also sending it to people who had inquired about business licenses and had, for whatever reason, not proceeded. Is that, I note in the report it goes out to applicants and not inquiries. Is that anticipated, or was it, or maybe it didn't come up in the course of this conversation?
No, in this one we are, it's how we take the data out of the database, and so we're looking at, has it been issued, and I'm using that issued field, but I can definitely go back and look at that. And the trick here is we don't require an email address. So only about 25% of our business licenses actually provide an email address voluntarily. So not having those email addresses has been difficult. But I will definitely look at those ones where they've applied and it didn't go through. That's the ones you're looking at.
No, actually, were the ones where they inquired. They got to the front counter and said, "What do you mean you've got to have 42 parking spaces for every coffee cup or whatever?" and opted not to do that, not to make the application. And as far as the email address, I suppose it would be counterintuitive to require an email address as a means of deregulating, but.
So the inquiries are harder because they're not in our system, but yeah, I can work with the manager of economic development.
I don't know whether it's possible to capture that or even to have this sort of form available at the inquiry point rather than necessarily at the end of the process. Okay. Councillor Robinson.
Thank you. Well, it's interesting that you said it's counterintuitive, but I do wonder what would it take if we require all this other data. Yeah. Why wouldn't we say we require an email address? Because this is the tool of how we communicate with people, and so is there any reason why we wouldn't require it? And maybe that's one of the pieces that would make it easier in terms of speaking with the customer and communicating, and it would actually streamline, because to mail this stuff out and wait for them to come back, your return rates would be terrible. They'd go down. So it might be one of the things we might want to look at is that maybe we do ask that you fill in this box and give us your email address, and then we have a way to follow up. I too, just like everyone else, appreciate the culture of openness and feedback that we're starting to see. I think sending out the message that we want to hear from you is, I think, a really good direction to go. Because I think what Councillor Reamer was saying, or at least how I understood it, is we want to hear from the end user about their experience, that we might think we've streamlined something or made something more efficient or have made it simpler, but we're looking at it from this side, and when they don't speak planarese, really it means like, what? What is that? But it's crystal clear to us. So I do think the value of speaking to the end user is critical to us doing a really good job. So one of the thoughts I had around the employee suggestion program, sometimes people need a little teaser, and I do know in other places where if you have a suggestion that that gets to the table, your name gets entered into a draw. So sometimes that sort of gets people a little bit excited, whether it's for a $50 gift card to some local restaurant or, a Coquitlam jacket or whatever. That sometimes is really motivating for people. And the last thing I just want to make note of in the list of the work plan progress, I'm just looking to see what page it is. Page 2 talks about, and it's a B priority, customer service directory, identify clear points of contact and create a service directory on the city's website. I think it's important that it have not just phone numbers but emails, and that actually came out of an email from somebody who was frustrated because he does all of his gathering of information and all of his, if he has a complaint, all on email because it's just more efficient for him. And there were times when he's wanted to call city for around garbage or around something, and he couldn't find it very easily. Whereas phone numbers were very easy to find. So, I think that's part of the transition is that everything should have an email. I just think that's part of being efficient. That was it. Thank you.
Absolutely. Councillor Asmussen.
Well, thank you. Good report. Thank you, Michelle. I do know, and I talked with David Monroe, that, from the business perspective, and I know we can probably do better, but I do know he's out there all the time seeking out, asking them what are their issues with the cities, what can the city do better from their perspective, and we're trying to bring that in. He's doing, I think, a great job all the time because I've talked to David about that, and he's one of the first things he's always trying to get out of businesses. What do you see that we're not doing, or how can we do it better? So I think we are getting that traction, getting that information, better ways to do it, but I think David's led a good charge in that already. I want to touch on the one thing that you mentioned is that we've done sort of the easy things now. And I guess what I'm looking at here now is, through to Mr. Steblin and the staff, is are we looking at budgetary issues to do some of the larger issues and then to prioritize from your perspectives of staff the more prominent needed issues and the budget for what the cost would be of a budget if we brought before council for our budget in the fall so that we can help move this forward that's what sort of I got the impression when you're mentioning is that sort of the free and easy stuff are done, but now we're looking into either staff time or equipment costs. Am I correct in that?
Yes, I mean, some of them definitely do have budget ramifications, and I think the report speaks to that, and those will be coming forward at budget time if it needs to be in the capital budget or has operational budget impacts, and then it will be coming forward as part of that.
And I guess my comment for council is that we can have all the employee suggestions, we're getting good feedback from the staff here, but if we don't fund the changes that the staff see to be needed, then your whole employee suggestion program might as well stop and cease because it doesn't become seen as valuable to the employees as being worthwhile. So it's now up to us to make sure that this process, if it requires budget and everything moving forward, does move forward, because if it does stagnate, you'll lose the momentum that we've gained over the last couple of years of staff being very involved, very helpful, identifying the process, the systems and things that need to be done. So I just hopefully that we as council don't drop the ball on this one.
Thank you. And I was actually going to make that point, and that is actually why we're so stepping softly, is that we have enough to do right now. So we could go out, we could start talking to the Tri-City Chamber of Commerce. We could, I'm sure I could get more suggestions from employees, and I could create a list that's, 300 items long. But if we can't get to them, we're just creating false expectations.
That's
so
right.
It is definitely, trying to move forward with the ones we've got, as well as I'm trying to keep sort of a steady stream that's coming in, but at a manageable pace, and in the right areas as well. But you're absolutely correct on that.
Well, thank you very much.
Well said. I do want to encourage us to listen very carefully. I think the best people to tell us how their jobs can be done better are the people that do the jobs now. Sometimes we substitute our own judgment there because we haven't heard from them, and we should invite them to be heard from, and then we should listen very carefully. Most of the suggestions, though, that I've seen from that kind of process have been either revenue neutral or cost saving. That they don't have that, they perhaps have a short-term capital cost. So we do have to, I think, as councils, find that ability to do it between budgets for the small stuff, the ability to react quickly when employees make suggestions, when we get good ideas from the public, so that we're not seen as saying, well, it's January, we'll consider that next November, because that really does tend to defeat the purpose and also discourage the process. So, seeing none others, thank you very much again. Oops. Why don't you ask? Yep. Actually, Councillor Reamer has one more question. Sorry. Just push your button.
Thank you so much. I meant to ask this when I spoke earlier. It's about the search function on the city's website. It wasn't working for a while. I actually used to use that function on the old website quite regularly to look up, for instance, if we wanted to find out what we've done on the goose situation as an example. I could just type that in to the old website and it would come up. There was an issue with that when our new website was first done, and I'm wondering if that's been resolved.
I'll have to ask our manager of communications over there.
If you type in goose poop, will it come up with answers?
No. There were a number of functions that were not operating at 100%, but we dealt with that one. Okay. And so it's usable now.
I haven't tried it recently, so.
And no, it is working. So you can go in there and do more of what I would call a Google type search, and you'll find something.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Robinson reports 0 hits on goose poop, which is not what you'd find if you went to Como Lake Park.
Just leave off goose and I'll refer you to us.
There you go. Thank you very much, Mr. McDonald. Thank you very much.
Adjournment.
We haven't received it yet. Who's moved it? Okay, Councillor Reamer seconds it, and Councillor Asmundson then moves it to receive. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Robinson, seconded by Councillor Reid. For adjourn, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much. See you at 7 p.m.